Have you ever wondered how many dark secrets America hides in plain sight? There are cases so mysterious, so terrifying, that not even the FBI has been able to solve them. And in 2025, these stories are back in the spotlight. These are the top 10 unsolved cold cases that still haunt America in 2025. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be double-checking your locks tonight. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time it is right now. I love seeing how many of you are tuning in from different corners of the world while we uncover these mysteries together. Story 1. The Long Island Serial Killer. In December of 2010, a quiet winter morning on Long Island turned into the beginning of one of the most haunting mysteries in modern American history. Police officers were combing through the brush near Gilgo Beach, searching for a young woman who had gone missing earlier that year. That woman was Shannon Gilbert, a 24-year-old escort who had disappeared in May after leaving a client's home in Oak Beach. Before she vanished, she had dialed 911 in a terrified voice, repeating over and over again that someone was after her, that she was going to die. Those words would echo for years to come, but during that December search, police did not find Shannon. What they discovered instead was the body of another woman, and then another, and another. By the end of that day, they had uncovered 4 bodies in the brush. All women, all in their 20s, and all working in the same profession as Shannon. It was a shocking and horrifying realization. A serial killer was hunting women on Long Island. The news spread across America like wildfire. What was supposed to be a quiet suburban escape by the shoreline was now the dumping ground of a sadistic murderer. Locals who had once enjoyed peaceful walks by the water now looked at the sand and tall grass as the hiding place of nightmares. Parents told their children not to go near the beaches, neighbors whispered about suspects, and every headline carried a new wave of dread. But the horror was only beginning. As the months passed and the search area expanded, investigators uncovered more remains. By the spring of 2011, the body count had grown to 10, possibly 11 victims. Some were women like the first 4, but others did not fit the pattern. One victim was a man, another was a toddler. That detail alone made the mystery even more disturbing. Who could possibly be behind such a wide range of killings? Was this the work of one single monster or multiple predators using Gilgo Beach as their burial ground? Detectives launched one of the most exhaustive investigations in New York's history. Forensic teams scoured every inch of the crime scene. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Helicopters hovered over the coastline, and analysts sifted through years of missing persons reports. But the deeper they dug, the more unsettling the story became. One of the earliest victims identified was Melissa Barthelemy, and it was her case that added a bone-chilling layer of cruelty to the entire saga. After Melissa vanished in 2009, her younger sister began receiving calls from Melissa's cell phone. The caller's voice was cold, taunting, and unapologetic. He told her that Melissa was dead. He mocked the family, describing details no one should have known. Each time the calls were traced to crowded areas in Manhattan, places like Madison Square Garden or Times Square, where thousands of people walked by. By the time police tried to close in, the caller had already disappeared. Imagine losing your sister and then being terrorized by the very man who killed her. It was the stuff of nightmares, and it cemented the case as one of the darkest unsolved crimes in America. As the investigation dragged on, names of potential suspects began to surface. One of the most heavily scrutinized was a local doctor who lived near where Shannon Gilbert disappeared. Some believed he lured her into danger that night. Others suspected multiple men in Oak Beach were involved, pointing to strange behavior, lies, and suspicious alibis. But each lead seemed to crumble under the weight of missing evidence. The Suffolk County Police Department also faced criticism for how they handled the case. Accusations of corruption, incompetence, and even intentional cover-ups swirled in the media. Families of the victims begged for answers while years slipped by with little progress. Then in 2011, Shannon Gilbert's own body was finally discovered in the marsh near Oak Beach, a year and a half after she disappeared. But her death raised even more questions. Police claimed she drowned after running into the marsh while in a state of distress, but her family insisted otherwise. They believed Shannon had been murdered, just like the others. To this day, arguments continue over whether she was truly a victim of the Long Island serial killer or whether her death was a tragic accident. For nearly a decade, the case grew cold. Families clung to hope, but many feared the killer had gotten away forever. Every so often, new theories popped up. Some believed it was a single serial killer with a very specific victim type. Others believed there were two, maybe even three killers using the same location over the years. Online forums exploded with amateur sleuths connecting dots, digging through old police reports and arguing over clues. Documentaries aired on television, podcasts dissected every detail, and the legend of the Long Island serial killer grew darker with each passing year. Then in 2022, everything changed. New forensic technology allowed investigators to re-examine evidence that had been collected more than a decade earlier. Among the items was a belt found near one of the crime scenes. On that belt were two initials, WH or possibly HM. The detail had been overlooked for years, but now, with renewed focus, it became the key to unraveling the mystery. In 2023, police zeroed in on a man named Rex Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, Long Island. On the surface, Rex was an ordinary man. He had a family, a job, and a seemingly quiet life, but investigators soon learned that behind closed doors, he lived a double life. Authorities searched his home and discovered an arsenal of over 200 firearms, disturbing internet searches, and hidden storage areas. Digital records showed his obsession with violent material, and phone records linked him to the burner phones used to contact several victims. DNA evidence recovered from the crime scenes was tied back to him. In July 2023, he was arrested and charged with the murders of 3 of the women found at Gilgo Beach, with suspicions that he may have been connected to more. The country was stunned. After years of silence, there was finally a face, a name, and a possible answer to the question haunting Long Island. But even as Rex Heuermann sat behind bars, the mystery was far from over. Investigators admitted that some of the victims did not match his profile. Some were killed using different methods, dumped in different ways, and at different times. Could Rex truly be responsible for all of them? Or was he only one of several killers who had used Gilgo Beach as a dumping ground? That lingering doubt meant that even with an arrest, the Long Island serial killer case remained unsolved in its entirety. In 2025, the case still hangs over America like a shadow. Families of victims wait for Rex's trial to provide some closure, but the nagging questions remain. Why did it take over a decade to identify him? Did police corruption or incompetence allow the killings to continue longer than they should have? And most terrifying of all, are there still other predators out there who have never been caught? The thought that Gilgo Beach may have been the hunting ground for more than one killer makes the case one of the most horrifying unsolved mysteries in modern history. The Long Island serial killer story is not just about crime. It is about vulnerability, about women who were often ignored because of their profession, about families who were taunted by their loved one's killer, and about a community forced to live with the possibility that evil could be hiding next door. More than a decade later, the images of burlap-wrapped bodies by the shore, the sound of Melissa's sister's phone ringing with a killer on the line, and the memory of Shannon's last words on a 911 call still haunt the public imagination. Even now, with Rex Heuermann in custody, the case refuses to close its final chapter. And that is what makes it so terrifying. The idea that the truth may never fully come out, and that somewhere, someone else may still be walking free. Story 2. The Delphi Murders. On February 13, 2017, in the small town of Delphi, Indiana, 2 best friends, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, set out for what was supposed to be a carefree afternoon. They were just 13 and 14 years old, filled with the kind of joy and innocence that defined youth. It was a day off from school, a rare chance to relax, and they decided to spend it hiking along the trails near the Monon High Bridge, a well-known spot where locals often walked and took photos. The sun was out, the winter air was cool, and the girls were laughing, taking selfies, and recording the day like teenagers do. But before the evening sun dipped below the trees, both girls would be gone, and their small town would never be the same again. When the girls didn't return home that evening, their families immediately knew something was wrong. These weren't the kind of kids to simply run off or forget the time. Parents and friends rushed to the trailhead, flashlights in hand, calling out their names. Police were contacted quickly, and by the following morning, the entire community had come together in a desperate search. What they found was worse than anyone could have imagined. Near the Monon High Bridge, not far from where the girls had last been seen, the bodies of Abby and Libby were discovered. The exact details of how they were killed were never released to the public, but investigators made it clear. This was no accident. Someone had murdered them. The shock rippled far beyond Delphi. This was a small town of only about 3,000 people, a place where crime was rare, where neighbors all knew one another, and where people didn't lock their doors at night. Now, it was a town with a brutal double murder. The most haunting part, however, was what Libby German had left behind. In the moments before their deaths, Libby had the presence of mind to record a video on her phone. On it was the image of a man walking toward them across the bridge. And then, just 3 words. "Guys, down the hill." That short clip became the most chilling piece of evidence in modern true crime. Imagine the bravery it must have taken for a 14-year-old girl, in the face of danger, to pull out her phone and record her potential killer. Libby's quick thinking gave investigators a face, a voice, and a lead. But as powerful as that evidence was, it also left everyone frustrated. The grainy video showed a man in a blue jacket, jeans, and a cap. His face was shadowed. His body was bulky. His walk unremarkable. The audio of his voice was scratchy and distorted. He was ordinary enough to look like almost anyone. Suddenly, the entire town of Delphi began to look at each other differently. Every man who resembled the blurry image became a suspect in someone's eyes. Every deep voice seemed to echo those 3 words. Police released sketches of the man, 2 different ones over time, and each seemed to confuse the public more than clarify. One sketch showed an older man with a hat, while the second portrayed someone younger, slimmer, almost boyish. Was it the same person? Was there more than one? For years, the community wrestled with those questions while police combed through thousands of tips. The FBI joined in, analyzing the video frame by frame, enhancing the audio, and running it through databases. But the case stubbornly refused to break. What made the Delphi murders so horrifying wasn't just the brutality of the crime, but the mystery surrounding it. Here was a killer who had been caught on video, whose voice was recorded, and yet for years he remained unidentified. The fear that someone capable of such evil was walking free, possibly living right among them, was almost unbearable. Parents in Delphi refused to let their kids out of their sight. The bridge, once a peaceful trail for photos and hikes, became a symbol of dread. Documentaries, YouTube channels, and podcasts began dissecting every frame of the video, every word of police press conferences, every rumor that surfaced. Amateur sleuths online built theories, connecting dots, speculating about suspects, and arguing over motives. The case became one of the most talked about unsolved crimes in America. Over the years, police hinted that there was more evidence than the public knew. They suggested that Libby had captured more video or audio than what was released. Families clung to the belief that investigators were holding back crucial details to protect the case. In 2019, a press conference shifted the entire direction of the investigation. Police unveiled the second sketch, the younger-looking man, and suggested that the killer might actually be much younger than people thought. The new sketch sent shockwaves through the town. Suddenly, the killer wasn't necessarily a shadowy older stranger. He could have been a neighbor, a classmate, or someone the girls might not have thought twice about. Theories spread like wildfire. Some believed it was a lone predator passing through town. Others insisted it had to be someone local, someone who knew the trails and knew when the girls would be there. Whispers spread about teachers, clergy, family friends, even law enforcement. Each year that passed without an arrest added to the frustration, making it seem like justice would never come. But all along, police said they were working quietly in the background, following leads, building a case. Finally, in October 2022, more than 5 years after Abby and Libby were killed, police announced an arrest. The suspect was Richard Allen, a 50-year-old man who had lived in Delphi for years. He was a pharmacy technician, described by neighbors as quiet, friendly, and completely ordinary. He lived just a short drive from the bridge, and all the while, as vigils were held, as police searched, as rumors flew, he had been living in plain sight. Even more chilling, Richard Allen had actually interacted with investigators back in 2017. When questioned, he admitted he had been on the bridge the day the girls disappeared. But for reasons still debated today, he was overlooked at the time. When news of his arrest broke, Delphi was shaken to its core. How could someone so close, so normal-seeming, be capable of such evil? Families of Abby and Libby felt a mixture of relief and grief. Relief that a suspect was finally in custody, but grief that nothing could bring their daughters back. The trial of Richard Allen has been slow and complicated, with arguments about evidence, legal challenges, and even bizarre claims involving cults and conspiracies from his defense team. But prosecutors insist they have the evidence to prove he is the man in the video, the voice on the recording, the killer who lured 2 young girls down the hill. The haunting part of this story is not just the crime itself, but the fact that it took years to identify someone who was there all along. For more than half a decade, families walked the same streets as the man accused of murdering their daughters, never realizing the truth. Even today, some people still question whether the full story has come out. Was Richard Allen truly acting alone? Was there someone else involved? Why were some details of the crime scene kept secret all these years? The Delphi murders remain one of the most disturbing cases in recent American history. They remind us of the fragility of life, the bravery of 2 young girls who left behind crucial evidence, and the darkness that can hide behind the most ordinary of faces. Abby and Libby wanted nothing more than to enjoy a day off school, to laugh, to take photos, to walk across an old bridge. Instead, their lives were stolen in a way that scarred an entire town. The video Libby captured, with its haunting words, still echoes in the minds of millions. Guys, down the hill. It is a reminder of the danger that lurks unseen, the courage of a teenager who thought fast in her final moments, and the hope that justice, though delayed, will eventually come. Even with a suspect behind bars, the story is not over. The families of Abby and Libby continue to fight for answers, to keep their memory alive, and to push for the truth to be told in full. And across the world, people still watch that short, grainy clip, searching for clues, wondering how something so horrific could have happened in a town so small, so ordinary, and so unsuspecting. The Delphi murders show us that evil does not always come from strangers in the shadows. Sometimes it lives right next door. Story 3, The Boy in the Box. In February 1957, on a cold, windy afternoon in Philadelphia, a man checking his animal traps discovered something that would haunt the city forever. Inside a discarded cardboard box was the body of a young boy, wrapped in a cheap blanket. He was estimated to be around 4 to 6 years old, malnourished, with bruises and scars across his small body. His hair had been crudely chopped as if someone tried to disguise him, and he had been cleaned before being left in the box. Police believed he had suffered abuse for a long time before his death. His tiny frame told a story of neglect, but there was no way to know who he was. Investigators worked tirelessly. Flyers with his face were distributed everywhere. The media dubbed him the boy in the box. Detectives examined orphanages, hospitals, and missing children reports, but no match was ever found. Thousands of leads came in, each ending in heartbreak. Families hoping to find closure would call in, thinking the boy might be theirs, only to discover otherwise. Over the years, theories spread. Some believed he belonged to a foster home known for mistreating children. Others whispered about a secret child given away by parents who wanted to erase him. Decades later, DNA technology allowed police to identify the boy in 2022 as Joseph Augustus Zarelli, but knowing his name did not solve the mystery. Who killed him and why remains unanswered. Even now, Philadelphia remembers him not only as Joseph, but as the nameless little boy who for decades symbolized the darkest depths of human cruelty. Visitors to his grave leave flowers and stuffed animals, honoring a child who never had the chance to live. Detectives still believe someone alive today knows what happened. But until the truth is spoken, the boy in the box remains one of America's most unsettling cold cases. Story 4: The Villisca Axe Murders. On a quiet summer night in June 1912, the small town of Villisca, Iowa, was shaken by a crime so brutal that it continues to terrify people over a century later. The Moore family was well respected in town. Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, their 4 children, and 2 young girls who were spending the night had just finished a busy weekend at church activities. They came home, ate supper, and went to bed like any ordinary family. But by the time morning came, every single one of them was dead. Each had been bludgeoned with an axe while they slept. Josiah was struck so violently that his skull split open. The children's bed sheets were soaked in blood, the walls stained with desperate splatters. Whoever committed the murders moved silently from room to room, killing one victim at a time without waking the others. Even more chilling was what the killer did afterward. They covered mirrors and windows with cloth, almost as if to hide from their own reflection. They draped clothing over the bodies of some of the children. A piece of bacon was found left on the floor near the murder weapon, a bloodied axe. The town was paralyzed with fear. Doors were locked. Neighbors grew suspicious of one another. Rumors swirled around suspects, including a traveling preacher, a state senator, and even a stranger seen lurking near the house that night. But every lead ended in frustration. Trials were held, but no one was ever convicted. The house itself became infamous, as later residents reported strange happenings. Lights flickered, footsteps echoed in empty rooms, and visitors claimed they felt an oppressive presence, as if the murders were still imprinted into the walls. To this day, no one knows who slaughtered the Moore family and their guests. The house still stands, now a tourist attraction where the bravest spend the night. And some say when the clock strikes the early morning hours, you can still hear faint whispers or see shadows passing silently through the hall, just as they did that night in 1912. Story 5: The Disappearance of Brandon Lawson. Brandon Lawson disappeared after running out of gas on a remote Texas highway. He called 911, his words frantic and difficult to make out, claiming he was being chased. When police arrived, they found his truck abandoned, but no trace of him. In 2025, after extensive searches and analysis of the chilling 911 call, investigators admitted they still cannot explain what happened. His family believes foul play was involved, while others think he may have gotten lost in the rough terrain. But the eerie 911 recording, where he seems panicked and disoriented, keeps the mystery alive. Lawson's disappearance remains one of the strangest modern cold cases. These stories are proof that the walls of America's prisons hold more than inmates. They hold shadows, screams, and secrets that refuse to die. Which one of these haunted you the most? Let me know in the comments and tell me where in the world you're watching from right now. If you want more dark stories like these, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and join me here again every time. Bye-bye.